As Persians, how many of us are proud of the power that Persia had in the past? But how many of us asked, what was it that made Persia so powerful? Where are we today in the timeline of world events? What is the best thing that can happen for this country and her people? Does the Bible have answers to these questions, as does it tell what role Persia and Persians played in the world affair? We live in crucial times. We live at a time in history that has become evident that each individual has a choice to make that is significant, both personally and collectively. Since every choice has its own consequence, what choice will you and I make as an individual, and what role will we play collectively? It is with this hope that you and I make our decisions not in darkness and confusion, but under the heavenly light and with open eyes. Psalm 119, verse 105 says exactly this about God's Word, the Bible. It says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet." That's a lamp that sheds light on my impending decisions as I walk in life. And it continues and says, "And a light on my path." That is a light that shines on the direction in my life, the direction that determines my destiny. Hello everyone. If you want to know about the past, present, and future of Iran from a biblical perspective, about the root and the beginning of Persia, why at the time of Cyrus this land was the most powerful rule in the world, the God that mentioned Cyrus by name over 100 years before his birth and predicted his victories, the God that told us in advance that Iranians will be scattered throughout the world, and foretold future of Iran which is unfolding before our very eyes. If these issues are important to you, this program is for you. The Bible is divided into two sections: the Old Testament, which contains 39 books, and the New Testament, or New Covenant, which contains 27 books. We will first look at the Old Testament. The Bible points to a one and only Creator, whose knowledge and wisdom is beyond all those who claim to be wise and are most educated. In Isaiah chapter 44, verse 25, God says, "Who frustrates the signs of the babblers and drives diviners mad? Who turns wise men backward and makes their knowledge foolishness?" But how do we know that what this God claims is true? The God of the Bible proves this by foretelling the future, so that 1/5 of the Bible is made of prophecy. In Isaiah 42, verse 9, God says, "Behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them." In order to examine the root of Persia in the Bible, it is necessary to start from the information related to the beginning of man. Based on the Bible, Noah's flood occurred 1,656 years after Adam. The yellow bars indicate the age of men who used to live much longer up until the flood. This perhaps was due to a different ecology, as the constant temperature and protective atmosphere covering the planet that prevented harmful rays to get to Earth's surface. However, after the flood, only Noah and his wife, their 3 sons and their wives survived. Genesis chapter 10 verse 1 tells us that Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The next verse mentions that Madai was one of the Japheth's sons. He became the father of all Medes, which occupy the northern Iran. The other names in Genesis 10 verse 2, Gomer, Magog, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Cyrus, point to the sons from whom the surrounding countries such as today's Russia, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan come from. In Genesis 10 verse 22, it provides the origin of Persians who came from Elam, son of Shem, son of Noah. So, from the kingly line of Shem comes Elam, the father of Persians. We know that Noah's ship landed in the mountains of Ararat on the top left of screen. The map also shows that Madai and Elam ended up within our current Iran. It also shows the birthplace of Abraham at the bottom left of the image. It is interesting to note that Abraham is the 9th generation after Shem, and Elam was Shem's son, so that makes Elam Abraham's uncle to the 8th generation. From our perspective, we don't live long enough to see more than 4 generations, but because they lived so long then, Shem lived 154 years after the birth of Abraham, so they could have known each other. So if Shem knew Abraham, obviously Shem's son Elam most likely would know Abraham as well. A short digress regarding God's name Jehovah. In most Bibles, God's personal name is not mentioned due to extreme reverence to God except for a few places. Instead, the capitals of L-O-R-D is used. In Exodus chapter 3, Moses is confronted with a bush that seemingly is burning, but it's not consumed by that fire. At this time, the Israelites have been living in Egypt and were used by Pharaoh of that time as slaves, and God is commissioning Moses to go to Pharaoh and ask for release of his people. In this passage, God tells Moses his name. Let's just read the account verbiage. Exodus 3 verses 13 to 15 says, "And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them?" Verse 14, "And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. Therefore you shall tell unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you." Verse 15, "And God said moreover unto Moses, Then you shall say to the children of Israel, Jehovah, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations." There is a prophet in the Bible called Isaiah, who wrote God's word around 739 BC, and his writings were completed by 732 BC. He was the one that predicted that the Jewish state will be trampled by Babylonians, today's Iraq, and later the Babylonians will be defeated by Medes and Elamites, that is today's Iran. Isaiah was a recognized prophet by Muslim sources, confirming the biblical text to be true up until the Islamic era. A good portion of the book of Isaiah in the Bible is prophecies and predictions. In this passage, God is mocking those who worship idols. And in Isaiah 41 verses 22 and 23, he says, "Tell us, you idols, what is going to happen? Tell us what the former things were, so that we may consider them and know their final outcome, or declare to us the things to come." Verse 23, "Tell us what the future holds, so we may know that you are gods." God is foretelling that Medes are coming against the Babylonians. This is at a time that Babylonians were not even a powerful nation. They became powerful after 612 BC. This prophecy is over 100 years prior, when Assyrians were ruling the region. You can imagine how confusing this prophecy could have been for the people at Isaiah's time. That is why prophecies are best understood after they occur. At the time when Babylonians themselves were not a considerable power, God foretells after they become a world power how Medes and Elamites, or otherwise Persians, will subdue them. God describes Medes as people that are not driven by money, indicating they were people of value with morality and higher conscience than purely economics. In these passages, God describes the condition of the Babylonian regime before they were captured by Persians, indicating they were corrupt people in power, betraying their position of service, and those who were affluent that could steal other people's money were doing so. And God calls the Elamites and Medes to take over this repressing regime, and this soothes the crying of the oppressed Babylonians. According to Isaiah, the people of that day, from coastlines to the deserts, were discouraged and faint-hearted. They had no freedom of speech or personal right. In Isaiah 41, God encourages people of that time and tells them that He will raise a leader from the east. This is talking about Cyrus, through God's justice, and gives this leader power, and this leader will rule over nations and kings. God describes this takeover as easy as cutting against dust with sword or wind blowing off the chaff. Let's read the passage together. Isaiah 41 verses 1 through 4. It says, "Keep silence before me, O coastlines, and let the people renew their strength. Let them come near, and let them speak. Let us come near together for judgment." Verse 2 says, Who raised up one from the east? This is pointing to Cyrus. Who in righteousness called him to his feet? Who gave the nations before him and made him rule over kings? Who gave them as the dust to his sword, as driven wind-blown shaft to his bow? Who pursued them and passed safely by the way that he had not gone with his feet? And these are all talking about Cyrus, because these are the locations and the areas that Cyrus had not gone before. And verse 4, who has performed and done it, calling the generations from the beginning? And the answer is, I, Jehovah, am the first, and with the last, I am He. So note that verbs are all used and raised up, called, gave, etc. They're all past tense. So although this is a prophecy regarding future in God's eye, this has already happened.